Have you ever dropped your hard-earned cash on a six-pack of your favorite beer only to get it home and find that it just tastes really off? Well, you just experienced what brewers and beer nerds refer to as an off flavor, and they come in a variety of shapes and sizes. Today we'll be examining the nature and causes of 4 of the most common off flavors that can mess with your beer. Hello beer nerds, this is Beer by the Numbers, and today we're talking about the most tragic of circumstances, when good beer goes bad. Beer is a chemically complex beverage that undergoes a series of physical and chemical transformations that turn water, grain, hops, and yeast into the bubbly concoction we love so much. However, because brewing, storing, and shipping beer is such a complex process, there are a lot of steps that can go wrong. Bacterial infection, exposure to oxygen, and even exposure to light can turn a delicious beer into a foul one. Today we're going to examine 4 of the most common off flavors in beer and go over how you can prevent each of these things from ruining your good brew. Our first off flavor is probably the most commonly experienced one by drinkers around the world, and that is skunkiness. A disgusting skunk smell in your beer is caused by ultraviolet light hitting compounds from the hops in your beer. Almost every beer in the world contains some hops, and the alpha acids from hops give beer its bitter bite. When ultraviolet light hits those alpha acids, they begin to break down and produce sulfurous compounds. Sulfur tends to make some very smelly chemical compounds, and when alpha acids break down, they produce the same chemical that makes a skunk's spray reek. Preventing skunking is as easy as keeping your precious beers out of the light. The kind of container a beer is in also makes a big difference. Cans obviously keep out 100% of ultraviolet light. Brown glass keeps out about 85% of the bad light. Green glass only 20%. And clear glass obviously lets all the light in. Incidentally, if you talk to some more conspiracy-minded beer nerds out there, they'll tell you that beers like Heineken and Corona, that are served out of green and clear bottles, are purposefully skunked just a little bit before shipping to ensure flavor consistency no matter how much light reaches the beer in transition. Our next off flavor is oxidation, and the cause is pretty straightforward. The beer is exposed to oxygen, either through a broken seal or improper storage. Beer is filled with all sorts of delicious chemicals and flavor compounds, but oxygen reacts with those compounds, causing the beer to taste stale. If you have an oxidized beer, it will likely be tasteless or even taste of cardboard or wet paper, or if it's really dark beer, you might even get some sherry notes. Some brewers enjoy those sherry flavors in their darker beer, and oxygen can impart those flavors on darker porters and stouts. However, those brewers need to be careful not to overdo it, as too much will break down the many other flavor compounds they work so hard to put in the beer. Unfortunately, oxidation is inevitable, as any small amount of air in the beer's container will eventually have its way with your beer given enough time. So the easiest way not to drink stale beer is to drink your beer fresh, and not keep your lovely IPAs around for years and years and years. Our first 2 off flavors are pretty easy to detect for most people, but this next one is one that some people are much more sensitive to than others. Diacetyl is a compound that gives beer a fake butter flavor or even butterscotch notes, and also gives the beer a slick mouthfeel. Diacetyl is caused by oxygen reacting with an alpha-acetolactate, which is a normal byproduct of yeast metabolism. Normally, yeast reabsorb and break down alpha-acetolactates if given enough time, but if a brewer doesn't give the yeast enough time, it can remain in the beer, and as soon as you open that beer to drink it, it breaks down into a slick, buttery mess. Personally, I am particularly sensitive to diacetyl, and have had 6-packs of pretty highly rated beer that have given me butter bombs. The final off flavor we're covering today is Lactobacillus. Lactobacillus is a strain of bacteria. In fact, it's the same strain used to turn milk into cheese and yogurt. Lactobacillus eats the sugars in the unfermented wort, but instead of converting them to alcohol, they convert them to lactic acid. Lactic acid in small amounts can give beer a sour flavor, but in more significant quantities, it gives beer a cheddar cheese or sour milk flavor that is pretty unpleasant. Despite the cheesy places that Lactobacillus can take a beer, sour beer styles such as the Berliner Weiss are growing increasingly popular, and a small amount of Lactobacillus plays a big role in those beers. Before we wrap up this video, it's important to note that some people are more sensitive to certain off flavors than others. For example, I'm really sensitive to diacetyl, but I'm not very good at detecting metallic tastes in beer. So if someone tastes something weird in a beer that you can't detect, take their word for it. Off flavors are often very subtle in today's commercial beer. If you didn't detect any funky flavors in this video, give it a thumbs up below. And if you want to be alerted each time we tap a fresh episode of Beer by the Numbers, hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to share Beer by the Numbers with a beer nerd in your life. You'll both become smarter drinkers together. Stay curious, beer nerds, and as Alison Cook once said, there's more to life than beer, but who cares?